And welcome back to the third episode of Comment Commentary, where I look over at comments I got previously and I add commentary to them. You get everything in the name. This episode's comment comes from the previous episode of Comment Commentary. So, you know, the cycle officially begins. If everything goes as planned, this series will be self-sustaining as new comments come in. That also means that if you want exact context for what this comment is talking about, you can go watch the previous episode of Comment Commentary. I'm not going to give a recap of that because these are supposed to be short and snappy, so let's just go into it. This one comes from Aaron Ledford 15. It's probably Aaron, but every time I see that, all I can think of is Aaron. And it says, I think you mischaracterize the right and the reason they want a smaller government. I don't agree with your statement of what the right doesn't understand is that we are the government. We are not the government. The right wants a smaller central government so they don't influence the decisions of everyday people. A person who lives in some distant capital city that doesn't live in your same socioeconomic climate should not be able to tell you how to live your life. We are the people, not the government. The people are the rulers, and the government are our servants. I believe we have forgotten that dynamic in this country. The state should have more power, and the people even more power to choose what they want for themselves. I do appreciate your effort to make a non-biased video. Your bias was still there, but I think that would be apparent no matter who does a political video like this. Okay, so just right off the bat, I did not attempt to make a non-biased video. I attempt to make a calm video. There's no such thing as a non-biased video, and anyone who claims to be non-biased is lying to you. You should get away from them. Everyone has bias. It's just about learning what that bias is so that you can account for it. Now, that being said, the main thing I wanted to look at this for is sort of the interesting psychology at work here. I mean, I don't want to psychoanalyze Aaron. I don't know how he eats his breakfast cereal. I don't know exactly what he's thinking. But when I read this comment for the first time, it really struck me how the beginning of it seems like a whole bunch of right-wing talking points that I've heard before. Almost said in that exact same language, you know. We want a smaller central government so that they don't influence the decisions of everyday people. Someone in a distant capital city shouldn't tell you how to live your life. And then as they went along with it, and they sort of thought of it and logicked it out, they came to this very non-talking points point, which is the people are the rulers and the government are our servants. Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I think that's kind of the point I was making before. I think you just phrased it slightly wrong. The people are the rulers, absolutely. The politicians are our servants. The politicians should do what the people want. They should represent the will of the people. And I think that might be something where, you know, there's a lot of people who, when they hear the government, they assume the government is just made up of politicians. And that's not correct. You know, the police are part of the government. The U.S. mail carriers are part of the government. People in the CIA, the FBI, who aren't politicians, but who do government work, are part of the government. And perhaps most importantly, I think that most people would agree that the rulers of the country are the government. You know, it's hard to think of any sort of governmental style where the ruler is not also responsible for the government. Like, in trying to reason this out, you sort of came back to agreeing with what I said. The people are the rulers. And I think that's very interesting because I feel like this is a good example of what I talk about a lot on this channel, where leftist policies, leftist ideas are very popular. If you explain them to people, a lot of people will agree with them almost inherently. But leftist branding has a big problem. A lot of people, they hear a word like big government, and their brain just goes to all these talking points they've heard, all these memes that have been hammered into their head for years and years by a variety of different sources. And it just clicks in. They're like, yeah, someone in a distant city shouldn't tell me what to do. Less centralized government means more freedom to me. And they don't really stop to think about what that actually means or if that's actually true, because it's just been kind of hammered in. When they do stop to think about it, they're like, yeah, the people are the leaders. The politicians, the people we think of as the government, are our servants. And the thing is, if that's true, if you agree with that statement, then why would you want to make your servants weaker? Why would you want less servants? If the government is your butler that makes sure your needs are met, why would you want to cripple them? Why would you want to take away their ability to help you? Ideally, the stronger your servants are, the more powerful they are, the more they can enact your will, make your life easier, get the things done that you want to get done, so that you're free to focus on what you want to do. The problem is not big government. The problem is that the government isn't democratic enough, that the government doesn't represent you. You are part of the government, but it doesn't feel like you are because we've lost a lot of the democratic institutions that we started with. Over time, a lot of parts of America have become less representative. And that's the problem we need to solve. A lot of right-wing media, a lot of right-wing politicians are basically on this trip of what we need to do is take people out of the government. We need to remove all these institutions. We need less politicians. We need less bureaucrats. And all that's going to do is make you more susceptible to the forces that aren't government ones that are controlling your life. Namely, the forces of nature, just the weather in general, but also the forces of big business. I don't think people understand that the reason we have a whole bunch of organizations like the FDA that regulate food is because there was a time when they didn't, and food companies were just straight up selling people like poison. Like there was a time when the milk industry just used to put chalk into the milk because the milk was so full of blood that it was turning red and they had to find a way to turn it white again. It was awful. If you ever read like The Jungle, that was a book all about like how bad factory conditions have gotten there. A lot of government stuff that we rely on is there for our interest, to make sure that we can just go to the store and buy something and not have to worry about whether or not it's going to make us sick. And as we tear down parts of the government, as we remove regulations, then we allow the forces of big business, of big economics to come in and make our lives less free, make it more difficult for us to exert our freedom. But yeah, at the end of the day, it just comes back to looking at what you actually want and figuring out things backwards from there, instead of trying to think of the terms and the talking points that you know. So for example, if you want the government to be more representative of you, how do we do that? Well, one way is to have more representatives in general. A big problem with Congress right now is that there's 300 million Americans and 400 people in Congress. And even though 400 seems like a lot, it's not to represent that many people. There used to be a time when America was first founded where it was like, once we hit a certain number of people, every, I think, like 50,000, we added another congressperson on there. And then at one point we just like decided that no, we wanted to cap how big Congress could get. 450 is too many. Let's just stop it there and then have it be proportional to how many people are in the country. And since then, as the population has grown, that means every congressperson is representing more and more of the population. They have to represent more and more people, which means your individual voice gets drowned out. If you want more local representation in the federal government, if you want every congressperson to represent like your area and not your area plus every area around it, like 1 million people, then we need more congresspeople, which means making the government bigger. And it's the same thing if you talk about, we want more checks and balances. We need to distribute power among more people so that no one person has too much power that they can, use corruptly. If you talk about wanting to get rid of corruption, how do we stop corruption? The eternal problem. Aside from, getting rid of money entirely, the more people there are in the government, the harder it is to bribe any of them. When there are just 9 Supreme Court judges, it's not too hard to get to all of them, or at least half of them. If there were 90 Supreme Court judges, it becomes significantly more difficult to influence half of the courts. In every direction you look, everything that you actually want would be benefited by having a larger government. Which is why it's unfortunate that a lot of right-wing talking points have convinced people that no, if we give fewer people more power, they'll use that to protect your rights. No, if we get rid of all these people that are there working for you, instead of having checks and balances, we put more power in fewer hands, that'll work out better for you. Oh, if we make voting harder, it'll work out better for you. It won't. Those are all if you actually stop to think about it, if you actually stop to look past, the fear-mongering, the talking about freedom and all these flowery words, if you think not with your heart, but with logic, that you'll see that what they're doing is wrong. That sounds really mean. I don't mean to come across condescending. Arguably, the president could be split into at least 3 different people. Why should one person be the chief diplomat in engaging with foreign powers, and also the leader of the military, and also responsible for managing the entire executive branch? Those could be 3 different positions, and even managing the executive branch could be a whole council of people that we elect instead of just one person. We should also probably get rid of the Senate. If you think about the Senate, it's every state gets a vote, regardless of how important that state is, or how many people are in it. Why is Delaware as important as Texas? Why do they have as much weight in the Senate as Texas does? And over time, as Texas continues to grow and thrive and get more people, and Delaware remains the same, Delaware's power only grows in proportion to how small they are. But yeah, at this point, I think I'm just rambling, but hopefully you get the idea, Even if you don't necessarily agree with me, maybe you understand why I think bigger government is better. It's just that the words big government have a bad reputation. And I think what we need to work at as a society is sort of getting people to stop thinking with their hearts. To not hear a word that sounds scary and immediately get scared and immediately recall to, no, the big scary government will take away my freedoms. But thank you to Aaron over here for getting the comment, as people are pointing out in the chat, in the Twitch chat. Very well spoken, very civil. It's what I like to see out of the comments. Despite if anything I said sounded like I was coming down on him or making him seem stupid, no, I don't think he is stupid at all. I think he might have been tricked by some right-wing grifters at some point, but, that's nothing that can't be overcome. That's nothing that you can't learn from and improve. And that's the whole point of this, we gotta learn new things, we gotta improve. And, if you think you can learn me a thing, if you think you can improve me, leave a comment below. Let me know if there's anything about this or just any random topic at all. Put it down, and maybe you could end up on the next episode of Comment Commentary. Wakasha.